Nice. Hi, Zizaran here with another upcoming build for the upcoming 3.15 Expedition League, and this is going to be a Hierophant Forbidden Rite Totem build. And since it's a new skill, we're going to be using Freezing Pulse early and having that as a backup skill. So this should be a really safe choice, and it is also going to be my league starter, which means that if we do run into any problems, I will be able to solve them, and you can run by my stream live, and we are going to do everything on this build. And this should be a really good starter. It should be incredibly cheap. It's gonna be a lot easier on Trade League because there are some really good uniques for this build, but I'm still going to do it in solo self on hardcore. Obviously, especially for Forbidden Rite, we don't have any footage of me playing this because it's a new gem. It's not even fully in Path of Building yet. And I haven't played Totems in a long time, so we don't have any footage of actual gameplay other than the PoE video, sadly. But I will be making updates on the build as soon as I get to play it. If you're not familiar with my build guides, make sure you're using the community fork of Path of Building, and we have a step-by-step leveling tree that you can access here, so you know exactly where to put what skill points at what level. Here we also have Ascendancy Points, so for example, Pursue the Faith being the first one. Our Bandit, we're going to help Illyria. This is really good on pretty much every build at League Start, but we are also going to be a crit build fairly early on, so it makes extra sense for us. The Pantheons is most likely going to be Solaris and Ralakesh, which should be really strong for the build. Now, if we move over to skills, we have like the leveling skills, etc. We're going to start off with Stormblast Mine, Freezing Pulse, and we can use Orb of Storms, etc. And we'll keep this early on. And as soon as we get our first Ascendancy, and we'll be around, we'll be switching pretty much once we get Ancestral Bond and our normal lab, we'll have 3 totems, and we will be using Freezing Pulse for quite a while. Now, Forbidden Rite isn't in Path of Building yet, so we've just put Dark Pact here for now. And it should come in hopefully before the league launches. Now, you might be wondering, when do you swap? And you might end up playing Freezing Pulse for a long time on solo self-on. So what's going to prevent us from swapping to Forbidden Rite early is that we need a cluster jewel. So we want to find the increased totem damage, and then it is going to be Ancestral Preservation. This is incredibly good because it's 30% totem life, which will give us a lot more damage, and then we have Totems gain 40% chaos resist, which is incredibly important. Since it's a new skill, I'll quickly explain how it works. This is very hard to self-cast because it takes 40% of your total life and 25% of your maximum energy shield as chaos damage. Now, obviously, you can bypass this by being CI, right? Then you're immune to chaos damage. And other than that, it's going to be very hard to self-cast. That's why we're going to use Totems. However, if we take this early when you first get it, your totem is pretty much going to die in 2 or 3 casts because you're not going to have that much chaos resist. And also you can see that it's dealing 12% of its maximum life as chaos damage. We did some rough calculations on this, and it's over 2000 damage with pretty great gear. That is 4 times more than the base damage of the skill at level 20. So it's an incredible amount of damage from that, and it looks really good on paper. And we're hoping that the skill will have some AoE overlap, and it just looks very strong, so should be great. Other than that, I've seen some friends of mine have been doing Freezing Pulse totems, and they've been absolutely annihilating things like Uberziri and the Feared on hardcore. Once we get this, Ancestral Preservation is the main one you want to roll. Sleepless Sentries is really nice because Onslaught, if you've summoned a totem recently, is really great. And we're picking up a lot of like totem life and totem damage on the skill tree as well. And in the late game, we would be moving towards crit. Obviously, it's very hard to get high crit numbers now because of the crit nerfs and Diamond Flask getting nerfed. But yeah, we should get a decent amount. So at the end game on bosses, you can look around trying Wither Totem and see if it's worth it. Or you could self-cast the Wither if you don't want to, if you just want to have only damaging totems up. Not 100% sure what ends up being the best because we haven't really tried this. Same with the Ascendancies, might not be fully set in stone. I'll definitely be experimenting with dropping Ritual of Awakening and grabbing Sanctuary of Thought. The thought process behind that would be if there's a lot of AoE overlap potential on the skill, we would maybe get as much as 80% AoE because we would, late game, we would have our aura reserved in an Essence Worm and then Minor Matter, so we would have a large amount of unreserved mana. Let's look a little bit at the gear. Early on, you're just going to be going for 1s with plus level of cold spell skill gems, and flat added cold damage to spells would be good, and spell damage as well, pretty much, or in cast speed. Like, so many stats you can get early on. Other than that, we're looking at just life and resist on every item. We always try to make sure that the build looks good and works with very little gear. So first we'll look at some endgame freezing pulse items. If Forbidden Rite, for example, doesn't turn out to be great, or you're struggling to get the cluster jewel. Freezing pulse totems should be really strong still. So we have some really good endgame items here. Like Viridi's Veil drops off Maven, and it makes you hexproof if you have a magic ring in the right slot. This is insane. And we would do something like this, like a 77 life ring. And, you know, you could also go for a curse on hit ring. But yeah, either way, it's so that we can use Soul Mantle and get one additional totem. It's a really, really strong helmet, but obviously it drops off Maven, which isn't going to be something you're getting on the first few days. Soul Mantle, fairly common. Obviously, it is a lot harder to bypass the negative effect now because we can't just use a Curse Flask for Curse Immunity. Other than that, a lot of the gear isn't too hard. We would really like a +1 max totem shield. These are fairly hard to get. And super endgame, if you can get something like this with, you know, really high life, really high spell damage, or life on block and try to somehow fit block in the build, could be really cool, but that sounds like a really, really hard challenge. Other than that, Panamonis would be really good for the Freezing Pulse version, and you could also go for +1 cold or +1 intelligence gem. Essence Worm, going to be a very, very big drop for this build on Solo Selfan, so keep an eye out for that. Other than that, just a pretty standard life belt. And another thing that's really important for the Freezing Pulse version, even like early on around level 40 or whenever you kill Innocents, to use the first snow. And you can use 2 of these, then you get 4 additional projectiles. We're also using Mind Over Matter on this build, so that should add a large amount of defense. And remember, if you're struggling with anything, make sure you check out the notes section. There's loads of information in there. And we'll have loads of like different gear sets and stuff like that. So there should be loads of information for you on this build. And we will be hopefully having an update maybe on day 2 or 3, depending on how fast we can explore the build. And hopefully another one later in the league, like around 4, 5, or 6. But we'll try to update the build as much as we can. Should be really, really strong. Now, obviously, not everything is sold for this build. Like, we're not 100% sure if we are going to be using an Enduring Mana Flask for this build. We will maybe use a Catalyzed Eternal Mana Flask. And we'll see how it plays out. We'll play around a lot with it. And same for the Ascendancy Points. Might not be locked out. So I'll try to update things. Maybe I'll try some different things and see if they're good. And we'll see. But I'm very, very excited to try a new skill gem as a very, very early starter, with Freezing Pulse being a very easy backup. Another thing that could be really cool would be the new Frozen Orb, also called Eye of Winter. It could be really strong on this build. We don't know, and that would be something I would love to test, and I'll definitely level the skill gem. Either way, I hope you guys have an amazing start of 3.15. Share the videos if you feel like they help you, and sub if you enjoy them, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.